Thanks for pressing play. Legends and Losers is sponsored by Oracle NetSuite. Turbocharge the growth of your business today at netsuite.com/legends. Today, I sit down with my buddy, Dr. James Kelley. He has a PhD in marketing. He's a professor of marketing at the United Arab Emirates University. We talk about why failure and losery make us who we are. We talk about why every crucible moment is a gift and why being an authentic leader matters. All right. The Rabones said, hey ho, let's go. And that's what we're going to do. Welcome to this episode of Legends and Losers. I'm stoked you're with me. This is a great episode with a great guy with a very, very big brain, a very cool haircut. He's got my hairdo. And we unpack his new book, The Crucible's Gift. And this is a conversation that I hope you love. Now, if you're new to Legends and Losers, I want to thank you so much. This is a very different kind of podcast. We are not the traditional interview show. We hardly edit this show. And the experience we hope you have is an eavesdropping experience on a real conversation. The show's called Legends and Losers because sometimes we're a legend and sometimes we're a loser. They're two sides of the same coin. And we try to have an authentic dialogue about what it really takes to design a legendary business and a legendary life. Now, why I'm excited about this episode is Dr. James Kelley has written a great book called The Crucible's Gift that really deals with a lot of this theme. You can find him on Twitter at Executives A Hour, and that's because his podcast is called Executives After Hours. And as I mentioned off the top, he's a professor of marketing. He has a PhD in marketing. You can find out more about his incredible background at legendsandlosers.com. Just check out the show notes for this episode. And here he is, my buddy, Dr. James Kelley.
Kind of going back to the fact that I wasn't the kid that was supposed to mount anything. And it's an ongoing struggle for me that I feel like I have to prove myself to someone. But the reality is, if I was to step back, the only person I need to prove myself to is me, right? I don't know
if you do need to prove yourself to you. Like, I would not be right in the head if I hadn't proved myself to me. I wouldn't. And I know guys who are of a similar vintage as I am. That's my friend
sweet,
Paul.
Fine wine.
My friend Paul Holland was on the podcast recently, the legendary venture capitalist, and he said, "Yes, I think you and I are of similar vintage." And that's a very nice way of saying. So I'm borrowing that from him. But men of a certain vintage, if they haven't proved themselves to themselves, and it tends to be along clear lines, right? It's, am I a good provider? Have I achieved a level of success and some level of recognition in my field that I'm at some level of mastery? Or at least I'm respected by my peers and colleagues and coworkers. And whether you're a plumber or a technology entrepreneur or, a PhD in marketing or whatever it is you are, that there's some level that the world around you acknowledges you as a person of consequence, a person of some level of somebody who matters, right? And as a result, you're a provider. If you have a family, you're good at, you do that, and you're respected in your family. You're respected amongst your friends as a man they can count on. I think the men who are at a good place in their life, generally the world around them views them as somebody who, I can count on this person. They're good to their word. They're good to their commitments. Somebody I respect and admire. They're what you could think of as a 360-degree person, right? They're generally physically fit. They're generally eat well. They generally behave well. They generally conduct themselves honorably, and they're somebody who achieves something, and they're somebody who's a generally good person. And they're a real, no bullshit, complete person. So the men that I know that are of a similar vintages to you and I, who are plus or minus there for themselves in their own opinion, they're good in life. They feel pretty good. They're, I just had a big milestone turning 50, and
congratulations.
Thank you. And so when you hit those milestones, I think feel different for human beings who generally feel like a reasonably settled, accomplished 360-degree person. And if you're not that, particularly for men, again, I don't know for women, but there's something wrong in your head.
Mm-hmm. No, I feel that. Like, I feel like, I often talk about, my dad died at 49, and probably up till recently, I had a clock going on in my head, a countdown clock. And each year I got a little bit closer to 49. I'm 44 this year. And I think, okay, I've got 5 years left till I die. What have I actually done? Well, like, family-wise, I'm good. I'm solid. I'm a great dad, good husband. But professionally, to the people who probably should matter the least amount to me, I still feel like I haven't proven anything to anybody. But I do have a saying that I always say, that the people I need to be kindest to are the people who are going to be wiping my ass when I'm in a wheelchair. So I need to be careful not to disrespect my family on my journey to whatever that journey is. So I'm very careful to keep that balance in line, because often, and I know you've seen this, and maybe you went down this rabbit hole in your career, is you get so focused on your career, you start to destroy those around you because you're trying to prove something to someone else external. Did you go through that?
Destroy is a big word.
Negatively impact. How about that?
Yeah. What I would say is I was insanely focused. And you can argue that was selfish. So for the better part of 20 years, from essentially 18 to 38, I worked. And I was married. I got married at 21 and I got separated at 38. And are those two things correlated? The fact that I really just worked for 20 years? I think there is a correlation, but I think it's overly simplistic and childish to say one caused the other. I don't think that's actually what happened. So I think the question is more a question, Doctor, of life design, right? What is it you're up to in your life? And for me, what I was up to in my life, for the most part, was working. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be a tech executive. Most importantly, forget what I wanted to be, the things I wanted to do and the people I wanted to do them with. I wanted to come to Silicon Valley and try to build, quote unquote, legendary companies and categories. I fell in love with that dream very, very early. And I wanted to come here and try to do substantive things on real problems with substantive people. And I wanted to push myself. I wanted to see if I could quote unquote make it in the big leagues of the world that I was in, right? If you're an actor, you go to Hollywood. If you're a country songwriter, you go to Nashville. So I wanted to go to Nashville and write country songs with the greatest country singers in the world and see if we could write hits, and write hits that I'm proud of. And so it was more that, you know what I mean?
That's interesting. And this is where I always find interesting that people's journeys are so unique to them and what drives them and what motivates them. I spent probably 20 solid years kind of trying to separate myself from any type of group or community. And I was so afraid to play in the big leagues that it was easier for me to not play in any league or to play in the farm league. Because in the farm league, I was a big player. And I think writing the book is my way of saying I belong in a group of people who I think have written nice books. And I'm clearly going to be biased about it because I wrote it. There's parts that suck, but I think every book has parts that suck that could be better, could be improved. I think if you're genuinely insightful, you want to improve upon what you've done, the work you've done. I don't know. Maybe I'm just never going to be satisfied. I have no idea.
It's funny you say that. I don't look at any part of Play Bigger and think, oh, that part sucks.
Maybe sucks is too harsh of a word. Maybe I should reframe that differently. I should frame that there's parts of the book that in hindsight, I probably could make stronger, but I was in such a hurry to want to get it done and out. If that makes sense. Because I mean, the thing that, again, we were in two different journeys. Like you were getting out to go do your own thing. I'm trying to jump in. And at 43, I see the
feels like it's sticking for you.
Yeah. And so I think the book is really good, and you were one of them, but I've got some really good recommendations for the book. And so I think the book stands on its own, but could there be sections of this book that I think that if I spent an extra 3 weeks on or 2 weeks on? Yes. Does it make the book, exponentially better? No. But would it make me feel better? Maybe. You know what I mean? So I think
it's funny, maybe you and I have a different interpretation. The way I think about it, and actually I give Kevin Maney all the credit in the world for planting this seed in my head. And it's sort of, I've kind of made it my own. He planted the seed and I watered it, so to speak. But that at the end of Play Bigger, he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he says something like, book comes to you as this completed package, this thing. And what a book really is for the authors is not a completed thing. It's a moment in time for them, right? And so Play Bigger was a moment in time. And for me, I think made a very strong point. Play Bigger was a period. It wasn't it was an end, not a beginning. Now, it was a beginning insofar as I wanted it to create dialogue. I didn't want it to be viewed, some people nicely call it the Bible of category design, which is, I know they mean a compliment and I appreciate that, but I didn't want it to be viewed that way. I wanted it to be viewed as the start of a conversation. But for me personally, it was a period on 30 years and I did literally turn the page. And so it was a completion, it was an end, not a beginning in that context. It turned out, of course, like every end, to be the beginning of something else, but I didn't figure that out for another 6 to 9 months.
It's funny you say that about the book, because that really, it was inside me. So the podcast is the framework. My podcasts were the framework of the book. But those concepts were inside me, and the interviews in my podcast just added affirmation to what I thought.
Yeah, because we're all having the conversation we need to have. We're not having some other conversation, right? We teach what we need to learn, and we hang out around topics that we need to have that are interesting to us. So it's, of course, your podcast is your book, and your book is your podcast. And, I've experienced that with Niche Down. I mean, there's a complete blurring of what is book and what is podcast, because it's just my life, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's exactly it. I was seeing executive coaches. This was wrapping up, and I felt like my podcast was starting to lose a little bit of edge. And we were talking about it. She goes, well, it makes sense because the history of your book was your podcast and you finished that chapter. So you need to rebirth your podcast if you want to keep doing that, as something that gives you new purpose. You filled the purpose through the book, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was really interesting. I didn't make that connection until we had this conversation. So to your point, the podcast is the book and the book is the podcast, and they just kind of went together.
The thing I'm working on for myself, after we handed the manuscript in for Play Bigger, it was a huge letdown for me. And the bummer of traditional publishing is you finish the book, and to quote Colin Hay, the leader of Men at Work, that great Aussie band, he's got a song, I forget the name of the song, but he's talking about, trying to make it, then it's going to be my life one day. And it's this kind of a song, right? And there's a line in the song where he sings, and suddenly nothing happened. And so, in our case, you're writing a book for this big ding dong publisher, HarperCollins, and you got big ding dong agents and all this stuff. And it feels very like, wow, ding dong. And you're driving hard to meet the deadlines. You're doing all the things you're doing to try to write. And in my case, Play Bigger was at the time my life's work summarized in 270 pages. And so all that is to say, James, it was a giant bummer. Handed in the book. It was this amazing process was over that was highly amazing and collaborative and creative and life affirming and fun and playful, and my wife making us awesome meals and getting drunk and playing guitar and all that stuff. And then suddenly nothing happened. Right. And it was fucking November to June. Right. And it's like, wow. And like a lot of an emotional roller coaster went on from that November to June. And, a lot of it was actually not fun, to be clear. But anyway, long story way longer, self-publishing, this time it feels different, right? We are in the final phases of the book. It comes out in July, and we're going to finish editing it, and it's going to come out essentially.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that will feel better. And then the other thing, this is something I never thought I'd write a book, never mind 2 books. And the aha I've had, this is leading me to a question, is I'm probably going to be writing a book for a long time. And so I already have 2 new book ideas on the drawing board. So I think I'm going to start writing the next book very soon thereafter. Anyway, I'm trying to, and I have, of course, the podcast. So I'm trying to do things to get in front of this psychological letdown of, like, you write this book and you've been living with it for so long and you love it, and then you complete it, and this thing that you love, you're no longer doing, and it's like a huge letdown.
Yeah.
That's how it was for me. And I don't want to finish Niche Down because I don't want to not be writing this book with Heather Clancy. Like, I'm so in love with working with her, what we're doing. I don't want to stop. Anyway, how's that shit felt for you?
So for me, it was interesting because I wrote my book in 7 weeks. So I sat down in a cafe in Peniche, Portugal, and I was there 5 days a week while my family was on the beach. And I would write from 9 a.m. till 4 p.m. and I'd finish off with a pint of beer every single day. And I'd go meet him at the beach. And I was religious with it for 6 straight weeks. That's exactly what I did. That's why we were there. And I had a formula for how I wrote. So I was able to do everything really fast. And so the whole process for me was really truncated. And so when I handed in my final manuscript, which was in August, then we were doing edits. I only had like 3 months in between before it launched. So it was really fast. So I haven't had that letdown because that's not true. After the final thing was done and there was no more edits, I probably had about a month of what next before I started thinking, okay, now I got to market. Now I got to get out there. Now I've got to do this. And so now I'm on this adrenaline high of, I need people to read this book. I've probably put too much weight on it, but I need people to read this book. And so all my efforts are going into that. Now, what happens when I get back in August from this trip? Talk to me then. I mean, I might crash hard at that point.
Yeah, I didn't have that experience. Getting out in the world and being on book tour or whatever was really an experience I will never, ever forget.
From what aspect?
Well, when people want you to sign the book, when people come up to you with your book in their hand and it's dog-eared and it's got Post-it notes in it and they say, nice things, and they want you to sign their, fucked up copy of your book. When, last year I did a speaking tour with NetSuite, and we were all over the US, and we went to Toronto and stuff. And, when you go and you give a speech, and after that speech, there's a line of 50 or 60 people who wait in line like you're Santa Claus to get their, 30 seconds with you or whatever it is, and to have you sign the book. And they say all the things nice things they say. At one point, after a couple of stops on the tour, the folks on the NetSuite team who were managing the events and stuff, a woman I fell in love with who was in charge of the show, her name's Lane Sobel. She came to me and she said, Christopher, you don't have to sit there and sign all these books. And I said, no, here's the thing. Mm-hmm. I poured 30 years of my life into those 270 pages. If somebody actually thinks this book's worth reading, and they want to say hello to me and shake my hand and get me to put a dumbass autograph in this fucking thing, I am going to sit here until the end of time. Yeah. Because I hope this book might make a difference to one person.
I feel like that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I hope for you those sorts of experiences, because it's been, it's a mind blower. People say, well, does it get old? And no, it doesn't get old. It never gets old. When somebody says, I value your work and it made a difference in my life in one way or another.
Does it fill your soul up? Like when you hear those comments?
Of course. It's why I do it. Look, I write and I podcast to make a difference and have fun. It's just that simple.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I mean, that is probably literally how I feel about it. So whenever I've gotten and received comments, it fills me. It just fills me of, I'm having a shitty day today, but that comment will carry me through for 2 more weeks. I don't need a lot. I don't need a lot, but when I get it reaffirms what I did. And I'm sure every time you were at a tour event and you had a line of 60, that just every time you signed Christopher, Lochhead, you got your little cup filled a little bit more.
Yeah, because you say, look, everybody wants to matter, so I don't want to, be silly about not acknowledging the truth of that. But to the point on being over yourself, that's important. But the thing that's really important, I'm a champion for these ideas. Like I know, the interesting thing I find about your book, so, you use the word crucible. And I'm always fascinated by language and languaging. And crucible is just not a word you hear. As a matter of fact, I don't know, there's some percentage of people who might not really know what the word means.
Oh, I'm sure. You're
staking a claim on an unused or very lightly used piece of languaging geography, if I could call it that.
I like the term.
And as we were talking, I just looked it up again. I love this. This is from the interweb. It says, a situation of severe trial or in which different elements interact, leading to the creation of something new. And so, like, what a great word.
Yeah.
And so, and you and I have a very similar thing. Not identical thing, which is I will always be fascinated by those moments of truth, those crucible moments when when other human beings are faced with a crucible moment, a before and after moment. Many of us, and particularly as we go through life, we get better about realizing it. You begin to understand when you're in one of those moments that my life will be different after this. And who we are, what we do, how we conduct ourselves, the action that we take, the action that we don't take, the things that we say, the things that we don't say in those crucible moments, I will forever be fascinated by that. And so I think you wrote an important book because you take people inside those crucible moments.
I mean, thank you for that. That's awesome. You know what I love about the way you talk, Christopher, is that without really describing the authentic leadership model, which is kind of the framework of the book, you've described the outcomes that can happen, right? So the way I interpreted what you said is that in those moments, you realize you're fundamentally different. And even though you didn't say it, the way it felt when you said it is that you learn to be a little bit more compassionate about those around you. You learn that your word is what matters most. Your behavior and word have to match. And I think also the journey that you're on, which I love to see, is that you really, really, really value relationships, good relationships, not superficial relationships, not transactional relationships. They're necessary, some of those, but you don't value those the same ways. True, real, and that's why you do your podcast, by the way, true, real, authentic conversations. And so I really appreciate what you said about that, because that was the idea that's why the wordplay isn't the gift of the crucible. It's the crucible's gift. We went back and forth on that. So
yes. The other one that I like that your book really amplifies or multiplies for me, James, is in those, I think we need to have awareness in those moments. And it's easy to be lulled asleep, and it could be something very heavy, like I had a conversation with someone about this recently, about death and dying. There are some people when a loved one is dying who they are unconscious about it, or they withdraw, they don't know how to deal with it, and they don't complete with that person who's dying. I think it's what you're doing is you're bringing awareness to this notion that there are these crucible moments in life. And
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, you tell me what you're trying to do.
Well, what I'm trying to do is say that it's okay to have a shit sandwich. It's okay to have those moments. Those are actually really good moments in your life. I'm sure you've met people who seemingly have moved through life and have had very little adversity. And you just think about how much they're missing about the importance of life and living. Like, look at just your motto, right? Do good and have fun. Pretty simple. But I think that you wouldn't be the do good, have fun if you didn't have some really crappy things that happened to you in your life that made you value those two propositions.
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
So I think for me, one of the major things, and this is kind of a reflection of my life, is that I've had some crappy things. Everyone's crappy things are their own, right? Everyone's crucibles are their own. The depths, the significance, the importance to them, it's everyone's own. I don't want to put a label on what it is to have a crucible for you, because it's yours. But what I can tell you is that my crucibles, my dad's death, family stealing $10,000 from me, getting fired from a job, getting a DUI, I've got a pretty long list. Yours might be longer because you're 10 years older than me, or 6 years older than I am.
I've had a lot of losery along the way.
Yes, right? But in the losery, and I think this is what's fascinating. So let me ask you this question. This will be a great example. So in the last 10 years, you can pick any one of your adversity moments. And I want you to kind of, in your mind, visualize this adversity moment. Can you tell me what the 2 or 3 positive outcomes of that adversity moment was? Because I know in the moment it sucked, but afterwards when you reflected.
Yeah, I think those adversity moments with reflection always bring clarity about something that I needed to learn. Right?
That opportunity of growth.
Well, yeah. And, my buddy Kevin Maney shares a story. I think it's about his mom. He shared it on Legends and Losers, but I think it was his mom, but hopefully he'll excuse me if I get it wrong, but that try not to overjudge something in a moment, because in a moment we think this is really bad, or in a moment we think this is really good. It's generally those two things. We're not sort of sitting there generally going, oh, this is somewhere mediocre in between, right? It's the good moments and bad moments. And, if you're like me and you have dysphaglia, and part of that is some bipolar, then you have high highs and low lows. And so you remember both of them. But you can be convinced it's the end of the world, right? And I try to remind myself of that great Richard Bach quote: what the caterpillar calls the end of the world, a master calls a butterfly. And so what Kevin's mom said is, just try to have that pause that refreshes, just kind of breathe in the moment, give it a little time, because only in time can we see, right? Yeah. So, you think about relationships that you are in that you're not in now, whether it's with a spouse in a kind of a committed love partner type relationship, or whether it's with friends or colleagues or whatever it is. So think about any significant relationship that you've been in that was, you're deeply invested in, and so is the other person. And for whatever reason, you're not in that relationship anymore, or you're, it's that person's out of your life. Those breakups, those divorces, those are very hard things, right? But if you ask yourself, okay, so why is this person not in my life anymore? It was either something that you did that, that was real assholey, that with hindsight, you needed to learn not to be an asshole like that. And then you needed to forgive yourself, and then hopefully find a way to get that person to forgive you if that was the case. And then sometimes it's because the other person's an asshole. Or here's the other one that I love. Not all relationships are meant to be forever.
Yeah.
And so the other interpretation that I have grown to accept, Doctor, is there are some relationships that just, they end, they complete. My mother shared this thing with me years ago. She said, people are either in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And we never know what it is until we're done, right? And so there are people in my life who I thought were going to be in my life for my lifetime, and they're not in my life anymore. And in some cases, I looked at them and said, this is an unhealthy relationship. I made a decision to not have this person in my life. Sometimes they made that decision about me. Sometimes there was a blow up, whatever it was, right? Or sometimes you just drift apart. There's no real reason, right? But if you look back on it, you go, well, it's okay. It's okay that isn't what it was, and love it for what it was, and realize that not every relationship is meant to be a lifetime relationship.
You use the word a whole bunch that I want to bring awareness to, that because it's really one of the cornerstones of the book that doesn't really get talked about in a lot of podcasts that I go on, but I think it really is the most important thing for my book. It's not only the crucible or the self-awareness part, but it's the idea of having a learning mindset or growth mindset. And it doesn't get talked about a lot because, we talk about compassion, integrity, all that stuff, but none of that stuff actually happens unless you're open and willing to learn about yourself. You can call that self-awareness, but I know plenty of people who go through a lot of shit that never transform their life. My brother has been in and off the streets for 50 years. He doesn't get it. He doesn't understand that he has a pattern and that he needs to change what he's doing. He doesn't get it. No matter how low he goes, and he's gone really low, he doesn't get it. And so the premise that I put forward in the book is that none of this you're not able to grow as a person, as an individual, as a leader, unless you're willing to learn about yourself, about your industry, about the people you work with, and just about being a human being in general.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think coming from a place of curiosity is certainly a place I try to come from, because I think that keeps you in that place. Trying to realize that being wrong can be an awesome thing, even if it sort of hurts in the moment or makes us feel embarrassed or silly in the moment. One of my favorite quotes is, if you haven't changed your mind lately, how do you know you have one? And look, we all have things, we all have positions, ideas, beliefs that we had at one point in our life that we either don't have anymore, or that we've meaningfully, quote unquote, evolved on. And my buddy Bix Bixen years ago said to me, most people would rather be right than successful.
I love Bix.
Yeah, how can you not love Bix, right?
Yeah.
And I know you've had he and Joe on. Actually, your episode with him and Joe is one of my favorite podcast episodes.
Thank you.
It's just really fun how they interact with each other, and you interact. Anyway, it's a great show. Thank you.
Thank you. There's something else I always say though. Sometimes as human beings, to the point about being right, I always have a motto that I'd rather being right isn't as important as doing right. Right. So if I find myself getting my back up because I feel like I need to be right, I ask myself, is that doing right in the moment? So
yeah, and I've also found for myself, like, if you're going to own the legendary, you've got to own the loser. Right. So, I don't know, a couple weeks back, I didn't realize it at the time, but I behaved very badly in front of my assistant, Candace. We had a mix up and something went down, and, I was just trying to power through it. And I was, let's call it rude. Let's call it rude. Let's call it assholey.
Yeah.
Conducting myself in a way that would not make my mother Jackie proud, or myself if I looked at myself as from a third person perspective, right? But of course, in the moment, we're doing whatever we're doing, and in this case, I was trying to solve a problem and deal with a sort of a last minute upset, blah blah. So, as fate would have it, I was, because we work remotely, so I can go a month or two without seeing Candace in person. As fate would have it, I was seeing her shortly thereafter with a group of people around. And so her and her husband walk in the room. There's a whole bunch of other people around. Of course, nobody else in the room has the context for this. And her and I, continue to work together. I apologized at the time, and everything was fine. But I sort of wasn't done acknowledging my wrongness and assholeness, and I wanted to make it 1,000% clear to her that I understood that my behavior was ridiculous. I was an idiot. She deserved way better. And I was going to apologize in person yet again. And so she walked in the room, and she was wearing open toe, nice looking shoes. And we were at a restaurant. And, I just dropped to the floor, did a "We're Not Worthy," and literally kissed this woman's feet and said, "Candace, I really apologize for being an asshole." And, she said, "Oh, you don't have to say anything, and we're fine. And I love you." And she was great, just like how she was when I apologized shortly after this little incident went down. But anyway, why do I share that story with you, James? Because as a human being, look, we know when we're assholes.
Yeah.
We know when we behaved in a way that we wish we didn't. And I've done this in my past. I think it's a human thing. I don't know why. I'm not a PhD like you. But some of us, when we get into that situation, and I've been guilty of this, of course, is even though we know we're behaving badly, we still kind of stick to the position because we don't want to admit we're wrong. And then we make it 1,000 times worse. I find, as I've been alive longer, that while I'm nowhere close to perfect, in those moments, if you can stop yourself and just realize you're being an asshole, and do what I tried to do with Candace, that actually makes you feel a lot better.
Yeah.
So
it also just makes the other person
stupidity. Yeah. Right? Just own it. Hey, I was wrong. You were right. I'm willing to say that in public. I'm going to try and do better. And I'm literally going to kiss your feet.
But it's that humility that draws people to you or other leaders who live with humility. I think humility sometimes is a lost art at leadership. I think that often, a lot of leaders think they have to be right at all costs. Being wrong is a sign of weakness. And I think that's complete bullshit. I think when people know when you're wrong in an organization, they know it. And then you stick to it. And I actually think it erodes your credibility as a human being. That's my perspective, right?
Yeah.
So I've never had a problem admitting that I'm wrong or apologizing to someone. You can ask my wife. Every fight, I'm the first to apologize. I feel like, again, being right isn't as important as being a good person. I'm not great at it. I mean, I'm not putting myself like I walk on water. I make fucking mistakes all the time, but I own them. And that's the thing that's important.
Now, look, there is a flip side of this, which is I'm not anybody's pussy.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, if you do something that I disagree with, something that I think is wrong, or, or if we have to have just something I disagree with you on. Now, if we're just having a nice conversation, I try to be as gentle as I know how, and no one has ever accused me of being gentle. But I will say, hey, I need to push on you on that one, or I'm not so sure you got, I'm where you are. That's sort of as polite a pushback on something that I disagree with as I can have. So I try to go there. But listen, if what there is to say is, hey, I'm sorry, Jimmy, you're just fucking wrong about that. I'm going to tell you.
That's fine.
I'll give you a simple example. I like to run on the beach. You've visited my home. And so yesterday morning, 2 days ago, rather, I was running on the beach. And there's a law in Santa Cruz, Dr. Kelley, that says you can't have your dog off the leash on the beach. Now, the vast majority of people have their dog off the leash on the beach. I could care less. I love animals. I hope you and your animal are having a great time. Two things I care about. You better be in control of that animal. And if the dog shits on the beach, you better fucking clean it up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to be good with you and your dog. So I'm running on the beach, and this guy, I don't know, he was in his mid-20s, I would guess. He's got a dog, and I don't know, the dog's some kind of a mix of a dog, but it's a good-sized dog. It's about the size, it's not as big as a lab maybe, but, maybe a little bit smaller than that. And it's some mix of I don't know what. So I'm running on the beach, and the dog comes charging at me. Now, I was pretty sure the dog wasn't going to get violent with me, but you can't tell at first the dog is running at me. So I slow down and I engage with the dog, and the dog starts to wag its tail, and it's generally friendly and everything's fine. But it did come right at me. It did force me to stop my jog and, got in the way and whatever. And I just played with the dog. I was like, hey, you got a stick? Or, and I found a stick and I threw the stick, and then I kept running. Then I came back, because I'm doing laps on the beach, and the dog does this all over again. And it's a big ass dog. So I stop. Okay, you do this twice. Now we're going to have a conversation. So a less evolved version of me might have had a very, aggressive conversation with this young man about it. I literally went over. I extended my hand to him. I said, hi, my name's Christopher. And he said, my name's Jimmy, or whatever his name was. And I said, oh, do you live here? And he says, yeah. And I said to him, well, then you probably know that having your dog off the leash is illegal. And, if there's a park ranger around here, you'd get a ticket for this. And I said, look, I could care less. But you got to know this is not cool. You got to be in control of your dog. And I can defend myself. If your dog attacks me, I'm going to defend myself, and it's going to be a real bummer for your dog. And I would hate to have to do that. But even worse, if I was a smaller person or a child, they might not feel like they wouldn't feel as confident. When your dog's running at me, I get ready. And I know that if something horrible is going to happen, I'm going to be able to defend myself. If you're a kid, if you're a small, so I'm having this conversation with me because he goes, oh, my dog's really friendly. I said, yeah, I don't know that. And neither does the 8-year-old and the 8-year-old's parents. So you sort of got to get more control out of your dog. And so, but this is the tone that I'm having the conversation with him with. And then he puts the dog on the leash and he continues his thing, and I wave goodbye and give him the peace sign, and it's a cool conversation. And so, you try to be appropriate to the context. You try to be a good person in the moment, in this case with somebody who's not doing the right thing. But at the same time, hey, listen, round 2, you're going to hear from me that you're in the wrong here and you need to get this fucking thing fixed. And I'm going to do it as nicely as I can, but I'm going to make it very clear to you, you need to get on this.
So, I don't think I was trying to imply that I don't stick up for myself if I believe in something. In that instance, it's different. But like when I'm with my wife or someone I love, and the fight's becoming trivial about who put the bacon away correctly or who didn't wash the dishes, it's not a fight I'm willing to have 9 times out of 10, unless it's, because usually those petty fights are about something bigger. It's never about the small thing. And so, but like in that instance, I could totally see why you would do that. I don't know how I would have handled that. I would have been, I don't know. That was well done, Christopher. Well done.
Well, thank you. And often I'm not that well done. I've been in business situations not that long ago where very meaningful amounts of money are on the table and somebody is trying to fuck me. And I have lost more money than I will ever make. And if I've been fucked in as many ways as you can be fucked in business, and got fucked pretty hard recently over a very meaningful amount of money. And it's just, at least in my experience, if you're going to be on the edge of trying to do some of the things that I've tried to do, it's just going to happen. Like there's no way around it. Now, I will tell you, if you're a person who fucks me in business, you're going to feel it. So, there is this sort of, I just try to take the high road and all. Yeah, okay, I love all that. But if you pick a fight with a fighter, don't be surprised when your nose gets broken, right?
I found that out in your living room when you and I were MMA fighting.
Well, that's different. You try not to knock out your buddies in the living room. And every once in a while, one of your buddies tries to knock you out. So
that was too funny. No, I appreciate this. This is a great conversation, Christopher. I really enjoy our talks.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun together. And I really appreciate your work, Dr. Kelley.
I don't know what you were going to call me there. Girelli? Was it Dr. Girelli?
I wasn't sure if I was James or Kelley, so I was I hit the fork in the road and kind of did a swivel.
I like it. You can just call me Dr. Girelli now. That's cool.
Dr. Girelli.
It sounds hipper. Like I feel so passionately about what I wrote and what I'm trying to do. And I think that's what keeps me going. I think, and I know you feel this, when you believe so fully and totally in what you've done, you will go to the ends of the earth to show people that it's good work. I believe in it, and you should too.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
there is a flip side for me though, which is I'm not going to.
There's always a flip side.
Yeah, sorry. I'm not going to chase anybody. I'm not going to beg anybody. We had, and again, the specifics are not important, but a very big ding dong podcaster, one of the biggest ding dong podcasters in the world, got introduced him through a mutual relationship. He said, absolutely would love to come on Legends and Losers. And the net of it is then goes radio silent. And like, I'm sure I'll send a couple emails and say, hey, we'd love to have you on, Freddie, and stuff. Chase him a couple times. But after the third email,
that's fair,
Freddie. Like I'm not, and it's the same thing with most of the guests come through my network and through direct relationships. In some cases, that's not true. Rarely, but it does happen. And if it's somebody we reach out to, we're not going to chase them. We're going to maybe go after them once or twice. But if there's no positive response after that.
But I think that's different than what I'm talking. Like, I think that's fair, but I think I have to prove myself. Like I have to show these guys that I'm not a waste of time and that I'll give them good content. And if I don't, at least in my mind, I don't think I'm selling myself out. I think I'm chasing the goal that I've set for myself. And I know there's certain hurdles that I have to get over and get to achieve the goals that I have. And I know that some of these guys are the gatekeepers to that. And I recognize that.
Yeah. Some of these guys have gigantic platforms. So, but yeah, I will nudge, but I'm not going to push.
No, and I think I've gone after people to come on my show, and I've 2 or 3 times I won't go after them. I mean, if they don't see the value in it, it's actually even worse for me when people come on my show and I warn them that it's authentic and we have real conversations and I tell them topics that come up and then they come on and then they get upset because those topics came up. I was like, well, I fucking told you it was happening. Like, I don't know what warning you want, but like, and I tell them a lot of times before we even start recording, this is what will happen. Oh, no, not a problem. I don't mind getting personal. And like within the first 10 minutes, you hear them going, oh my God, this is too personal. This is too personal.
Yeah, I think we've certainly gotten to a point where I think the vast majority of people who come on Legends and Losers know what they're coming on for, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't, well, as we say in the intro, strap yourself in.
And strap one on because you might get fucked.
No. I'm not.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. No, I don't. Yeah. Some people worry about that. It's like, no. You don't understand. I'm not a journalist. And I don't have anybody on that I'm not dying to talk to. So if I'm not fired, like I don't, there was this one big damn deal marketing consultant guy, and he's written some books and so forth. And he has publicly stated that he thinks startups doing category design is really stupid. And he has a position as to why. And, he sent me this note and said, hey, why don't I come on your podcast and we can like debate this in public? And it's not that I don't necessarily want to have the debate. I'll have the debate with anybody. It's not that. It's that I'm not stoked to like know that that's what we're going to do. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't give a fuck to have that conversation with you. Right. So I need to be stoked about what we're going to talk about. So anyways, I'm not trying to be a gotcha journalist, or I don't want to argue with anybody. If I'm going to argue with you, I don't want you on, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? I want to have a great conversation.
Back to fun and purpose.
Yeah.
Do good. Have fun.
All right, Dr. Kelley.
All right, man. Yeah, I'm going to jet. It's 11 o'clock my time. Thanks, dude.
Have a great night. Stay legendary, my friend.
Thank you for the opportunity. Talk to you later.
Thank you for the opportunity. We'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Whew. Dr. James. I love that he's a doctor of marketing. I don't know why I find that entertaining, but I just do. If you love this conversation with Dr. James as much as I did, why not share it on social media right now? If you've got a friend in your life you think would be into it, you can email it to them directly from your smartphone or whatever device you're consuming Legends and Losers on. Also want to remind you, if you're a Spotify person, Legends and Losers is on Spotify. You can subscribe to us there, and we would deeply appreciate it. The other thing I wanted to underscore, you might have seen that NPR is bulking up so that they can compete even more in podcasts. And so we have a government-funded media company who already dominates in podcasts, who's now bulking up so they can dominate more in podcasts. And I view this as an attack on independent podcasters, and here's why. Here at the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, we have not received any of your tax dollars in support of this podcast. And so I kind of think it's asinine that the government supports some media companies with tax dollars and not others. I don't know why in the United States of America we need a government-funded media company. Look, and I love a lot of the stuff on NPR and on all that stuff and Big Bird and all of it. But the reality is we now have a government-supported, not just media company, but podcast company that's getting bigger and is attacking independent podcasters. And so if you love independent podcasts, we need your help if we're going to survive. The way independent podcasts grow is you share these episodes and you rate them and you review them on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Stitcher or YouTube or wherever you consume podcasts. So if you love independent podcasts, please share them and review them. Now, if you are a business person and your company is growing, growth can be one of the biggest challenges there is. Do you ever get caught without enough inventory? Do you ever feel like you're not on top of your accounts receivable? Is QuickBooks getting you down? Our friends at NetSuite are here to help. NetSuite allows you to level the playing field with even the biggest of companies by providing you with the same capabilities that big guys have, empowering you not just to compete, but to crush the big companies like we're trying to do here in podcasting. NetSuite offers growing businesses a cloud-based business management system, a platform that gives you real-time visibility into all of your key operations. With NetSuite, if you're sold out of inventory in your warehouse, your website knows and your team knows that they need to order some more stuff. You have real-time data and integrated invoicing that keeps you on top of your customers and make sure your customers are happy. NetSuite is the one source of truth for revenue, expenses, customers, orders, and even human resources. So check out netsuite.com/legends. And when you go there, what you'll be able to do is sign up for a free growth review with a growth expert in your industry. You'll spend an hour talking to somebody who can help you break down and unpack opportunities and challenges for growth in your business. So check out netsuite.com/legends as soon as you can. All right. We would like to thank today's guest, Dr. James Kelley, in the incredible new book, The Crucible's Gift. Pick it up wherever you pick up legendary books. Speaking of legendary books, how'd you like that segue? Niche Down by Heather Clancy and Christopher Lochhead. Pick that up while you're picking up The Crucible's Gift. Our good friends at Equity Directory. If you're in the startup ecosystem, if you're somebody who works with startups or you're a startup and you're looking for people who will come and help you with some key projects and initiatives, who are willing to do the vast majority of their work for you for an exchange of equity, check out equitydirectory.com. Our good friends at onelifefullylived.org. This is the nonprofit helping you dream, plan, and live your best life. Check out onelifefullylived.org. Stop Riding the Pine, one of my favorite podcasts by my friend and one of the co-producers of Legends and Losers, the nicest man in podcasting, Jamie J. Check out Stop Riding the Pine wherever you enjoy podcasts. Our good friends at Verve Coffee Roasters in beautiful Santa Cruz, California, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Tokyo, and at most of the major tech companies in Silicon Valley, and always at vervecoffee.com. Interview Valet. If you're a thought leader and you want to get your leading thoughts on some leading podcasts, why not check them out? Interviewvalet.com. This is Dan Moyle and Tom Schwab's business. They've been a huge help in growing Legends and Losers and recently helping me do a podcast media tour for Niche Down. And speaking of podcasts that we love, The Jordan Harbinger Show. Check out The Jordan Harbinger Show wherever you pick up great podcasts. And you can listen to Jordan on episode 135 of Legends and Losers. If you're an entrepreneur, check out growwire.com. That's a new place for entrepreneurs on the internet. And the good people at the World Wildlife Foundation, because our planet and wildlife matter. Check out WWF.org. All right, we need to remind you that this oddcast is the sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, and we need your help. If you love this podcast, stop the encroachment of NPR and help us succeed and share the shit out of this show. All rights do remain disturbed. We must warn you that all episodes clearly contain nuts, and the producers of this oddcast may have been consuming libations. Remember to call your mother. Beware of pre-eye drivers in the passing lane. In the case of bullshit interviews, take 2 Legends and Losers and tweet us in the morning. Please introduce 2 people you love to 2 independent podcasts you love. Remember, there's no stopping the cretins from hopping. And today our deepest apologies go out to Equifax CEO Richard Smith. Sorry, Dick. We just ran out of time for you. That's it, my friends. Thank you so much. You mean the world to us. We really appreciate it. And I'll look forward to seeing you again soon on Legends and Losers.